Hello, Internet, and welcome to Always Right with Jeff and Steven. Today, we are going to be talking about the not as much breaking news at this point in the week from Pfizer about how the COVID vaccine did not stop you from transmitting it to others. We'll talk about that right after the intro. Get the vaccine. You are protecting others. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Go get the jab if you don't want to kill grandma. These are some of the arguments that we were hearing from all of our elites and betters as the COVID-19 pandemic rolled on. Now, many of us were skeptical of this at the time, and there were people preaching the message and the factual message that there is no evidence that the COVID vaccines, though they did protect you from getting COVID, that they did not actually protect you from spreading it to others. We will go over some examples of that. But first, we are going to take a look at the video that started off this entire story. This is from his name is he has a funny name. Oh, Rob Roos. Who is a representative in the European Parliament, and he had some questions for a Pfizer representative. Let's see, make sure I get the right one. I should have had this ready to go. All right, let's see what he has to say.
If you don't get vaccinated, you're antisocial. This is what the Dutch and health minister told us. You don't get vaccinated just for yourself, but also for others. You do it for all of society. That's what I said. Today, this turned out to be complete nonsense. In a COVID hearing in the European Parliament, one of the Pfizer directors just admitted to me, at the time of introduction, the vaccine had never been tested on stopping the transmission of the virus. This removes the entire legal basis for the COVID passport. The COVID passport that led to massive institutional discrimination as people lost access to essential parts of society. I find this to be shocking, even criminal. Please watch the video until the end.
Voor u, mevrouw Small, heb ik de volgende vraag waar ik een duidelijk antwoord op wil. And I will speak in English so there are no misunderstandings. Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunization before it's entered the market? No, we had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
This is scandalous. Millions of people worldwide felt forced to get vaccinated because of the myth that you do it for others. Now, this turned out to be a cheap lie. This should be exposed. Please share this video.
So there you have it.
Back on him a little bit. He said millions of people felt compelled. No, millions of people were compelled. We had United States servicemen and women get fired from their jobs of protecting the country because they refused to get vaccinated. And they were told, well, you're getting vaccinated to protect your unit, to stop the transmission in your unit, to keep your unit deployment ready, so on and so forth. That was a lie. That was a lie. There were people across, not just the United States, across the world who got fired from their jobs because they refused to get vaccinated. And when they were told why they were getting vaccinated, they said, well, you're getting vaccinated to protect the workplace. That was a lie. This is huge. This is massive. And it's like, because of our short attention spans as 21st century people, it just got swept by real quick. Nobody's paying attention to this. No one's holding these people accountable. This is crazy.
Yeah. So, and he being part of the European Parliament, there is a little bit more import there than there
Sure.
is, at least in our parts of the country, because they did do kind of like a Chinese communist social score kind of thing, where that you had what was called a COVID passport. You lost access to essential services in Europe for not being vaccinated. Um, your rights were withheld from you in many cases, and yeah, so I can imagine why it's a huge deal. Now we're in the South of United States. We live and know many skeptical people in general. Um, People I'm more in line with these days than I was back then. We should be clear. There is evidence to support that the vaccine does help prevent you from getting COVID-19, especially in older demographics, and because of that, it is a useful tool. We're not vaccine deniers here. We both got it. There was a point in time where you lamented the fact that you didn't go get the booster with the third shot or whatever, because you actually got COVID after we got the second shot. I also got COVID after the second shot. But
Well, my work is more important than most, and I lamented that I had to miss work. Is really what it was, and I felt like had I
that
gotten a
is what it was.
booster,
Steven doesn't like to miss work. But he's essential. But it never really mattered to me whether or not this vaccine prevented transmission. We sort of took, I hate to even say a libertarian approach, because that has just become a bad word to us lately. But the live your life approach of, I got the vaccine and I'm going to go about my business. I'm not doing this mask crap anymore. I didn't want to do the mask crap to begin with, especially now that we know for sure it was just all for show. But I'm not doing the mask crap anymore. I'm going to get my vaccine so that I can go about my life. And we told people around us the same, like, if whether you're vaccinated or not, go about your life. Just know that it looks like you are more likely to get COVID if you don't have it. And I'm not gonna disassociate from people who didn't get vaccinated, because either the vaccine works for me or it doesn't. But all the while, the government and the media and super gullible people in our society were preaching this message that no, it is not enough that I get vaccinated. You have to get vaccinated to protect me. Because if I'm vaccinated, but you're not vaccinated and we're hanging out, I might still get it. That was I worked for someone at the time. I don't work for them anymore.
Yeah.
That was very much of this opinion.
And it was wrong.
Yeah.
And see, here's the thing about the story is it's not news to us. Like, we now know that, yeah, if you get the vaccine, it's not going to stop you from transmitting to others. But we didn't know that in 2020. We didn't know that in 2021. We were all told this is what you have to do in order to protect the people around you. We were told you have, and you talked about vaccine passports in other countries. There were vaccine passports in the United States.
Yeah.
Like, there were cities in the US where you had to have a vaccine passport. Now, it didn't get as authoritarian as it did in Europe. Italy and France, they were most notable for it. Like, if you were sitting outside enjoying a meal, the police would come by and check to see whether you've been vaccinated or not. Like, that was some, I don't want to use that word because that's overwrought, but that was some authoritarian nonsense. And that kind of thing was trickling over here to the US, and it was all based on a lie. The reason this is important isn't because of what we know now. This was promulgated by the CDC, and it was completely made up of whole cloth. Like, they made this up out of nothing. They had no evidence whatsoever to support the claim you need to get the jab to prevent other people from getting it. It had never been studied in mRNA vaccines. It was never studied in this vaccine, and yet they told people that anyway. Friends and family, that is anti-science. That is against science. That is making up an opinion based on non-existent data. That's more of a religion than anything.
Right.
And that's why this is important.
Yeah. And I want to get into why that like what was the motive behind this. That we're going to speculate about a little bit about that, but first let's take a look at some more evidence from the time. So
Sure.
We're going to play this first. This is someone, Dr. Keith Armitage, who was asked about whether the vaccine helps. This was back in, you said, March of 2021.
March of 2021.
So this was shortly, the vaccine came out in late 2020, November, December of 2020. So this was shortly, we hadn't even had the vaccine by then, I don't think. It's been a while. Yeah, so
the question about transmitting COVID after vaccination is one that's evolving. So when Pfizer and Moderna did their clinical trials, they didn't look at that. They really looked to see if the vaccines prevented clinical illness. And when their vaccines were authorized, they were cautious and said, just because you got the vaccine doesn't mean you can't spread the illness. We know that people who get the infection naturally, about a quarter of them have no symptoms, but can still be contagious. We're starting to get data from Moderna, from Pfizer in Israel, from AstraZeneca in England. The vaccines really cut down on the amount of virus that you can get asymptomatically. Looking at the viral replication in asymptomatically infected vaccinated patients, it appears to be a lot lower than asymptomatically infected unvaccinated patients, and that's really good news.
So that sounds a lot like what we're hearing now. You know, there is no evidence that you be quiet. There is no, there were no studies done about whether it prevents transmission. It doesn't look like you can't really rely on it preventing transmission.
So that was March 2021. Yet here is what our federal government was saying in May, 2 months after, in the same year. Show that next clip.
Yeah, we're going to show, this is Dr. Fauci. Everybody knows Fauci, on with Chris Hayes. And now remember, Fauci, is the science. If you disagree with Fauci, you're disagreeing with the science.
That was from his mouth.
6 loss to the Baltimore Orioles on Sunday. The New York Yankees announced a 9th person in the organization has now tested positive for COVID. The Yankees have 9 total positives within the traveling party since last week, 3 coaches, 5 staffers, and shortstop Gleyber Torres. Now, according to the Yankees, at least 8 of those folks tested positive despite being fully vaccinated. So if you're feeling a little confused or unnerved or unsure, you're not alone. Can't think of a better person to answer those concerns than Dr. Anthony Fauci, Chief Medical Advisor to President Biden and Director of the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases. It's great to have you back, Dr. Fauci. Let's start. I want to talk about the masking, but let's start where we just left off with the Yankees, because I think it's probably the first and most high-profile outbreak amongst folks that are vaccinated we've had, right? We're talking about an environment where people have gotten the vaccination. What is your takeaway? What do you see when you look at this in terms of what it means for other people who are vaccinated but maybe still nervous about exposure?
Well, it's important to point out, Chris, that there's certainly breakthrough infections. Breakthrough infections mean you have been vaccinated, but you still get infected. But the critical point is that I think 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 9 of them had no symptoms at all, which means it is very likely that the level of virus in their nasopharynx is low and they won't transmit it. So although you don't like to see breakthroughs, the fact is this is one of the encouraging aspects about the efficacy of the vaccine. It'll either protect you completely against infection. If you do get infected, the chances are that you're going to be without symptoms, and the chances are very likely that you'll not be able to transmit it to other people. Again, you don't like to see breakthroughs, but to me, this is not something that's a shocker to me at all.
Okay, so he makes 3
Where
claims.
Where did he get that from?
he makes 3 claims there about the vaccine. That the vaccine helps you to it prevents you from getting it, helps prevent you from getting it. There are breakthrough cases. That the vaccine, if you do get it, makes it less severe. That's another thing that I don't really think has been tested. It stands to reason. It makes sense. It's similar to the flu vaccine. But the third point he makes is that if you get the vaccine, you are less likely to transmit it. And that's the one we're talking about today.
Where did he get it from? I mean, 2 months before, you have people admitting that that was never tested. They never did trials. They never did clinical trials on whether it stopped transmission or not. They were more worried about people getting ill, which makes sense, right? But where did he get the concept that it prevents transmission? And furthermore, why not be upfront with the American people? Give us the information and let us make our own risk assessments. That's the way life works.
All right, yeah.
Because
So that
the short-term gain is sure, more people will get vaccinated. The long-term problem then becomes when all this comes out, because it will come out, then people are not going to trust the institutions anymore. Institutional trust is at an all-time low, and it's because of nonsense like this.
okay. So yeah, that brings us to our next logical topic. Why? Why lie about it?
Yeah.
Why come up with this? Why come up with this far-fetched claim that this is a magic vaccine? It protects you both ways. It protects you and it protects the person next to you. Why? Because they wanted you to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And because allowing you to do your own risk assessment is not in their, it's not in their programming. It is not, when given the option between allowing you, providing you with the most information, allowing you to make your own educated decision, and simply lying, cheating, stealing, forcing you into getting it, they are always going to default to the latter. They are always going to choose the option that is most likely to get you to do what they have told you to do. And it doesn't matter if what they have told you to do is efficacious. It doesn't matter if what they have told you to do is the right thing. They are like a parent. They told you to do it, so you're going to do it. And that's how these people operate.
Yeah, but it's a bad choice. It's a bad decision, and it is the reason that institutional trust is at an all-time low in the United States. This is a
Sure.
COVID pushed institutional trust in America even lower, right? And I'm pushed is the word that I'm using. It just pushed it down and down and down because there were so many lies that came out. Lies concerning masking, lies concerning the vaccine, lies concerning side effects. There are no side effects to the vaccine, which I like you said, I took the vaccine. I got the first 2 shots of the vaccine. I have not been boosted. I got Omicron, and I mean, I'm a young, healthy person. It wasn't bad. I went on a 3-mile run the first day I had Omicron.
Right.
I was arguing with my sister, who's a nurse. I was like, I can't have COVID. I went on a 3-mile run this morning. She was like, okay, you big dummy, you probably have COVID. And yeah, I did.
Right.
I did. And people at home might be going, well, the reason it was so mild is because of the vaccine. I agree. I absolutely agree. Be upfront about that in the beginning. That was the problem. Be upfront about it in the beginning. No one was upfront about the vaccines or the masking or anything else in the beginning, and it has caused irreparable harm to our system of government, our institutions, our belief in people telling you the information that you need to know.
Right, but they are incapable of caring about that. It is not that they have no desire, nor do they feel compelled to be honest with you about anything. They will do and say whatever they need to get their desired result. And and you think about, okay, well, it doesn't make sense. Why lie about transmission? Why not, come out and say, because they had this was done intentionally to separate you.
Mhm.
It was done intentionally to create another separation, a sort of class separation between the vaccinated and the other.
Mhm.
And not like this was another way for them to compel you to get vaccinated. It is not only it is now not just that you are more susceptible to the virus. It is now not only are you more susceptible to the virus, but you are evil for not getting the
Mhm.
vaccine.
Yeah, you're killing
Because
grandma.
you are killing everyone around you because you don't have the vaccine, because you're spreading COVID to everyone. This was a lie. It was a malicious lie told to make you feel like the bad guy so that you would then this is a very common. It is not just that you are stupid for not doing what we tell you. You are evil for not doing what we tell you. This was the purpose behind the lie.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You're hitting the nail on the head there, and I guess that's the infuriating part for me. That's the part that I don't know if I'll ever get past that part. Uh-oh,
Yeah,
you're spinning. Okay, there you are.
No, I'm here. Yeah, but once you like, we've sort of talked off screen about this. I'm becoming much more cynical. You said I was pessimistic. I'm not pessimistic. I like
You're cynical. Yeah,
I am super cynical. I don't like. I know that, I'm a Christian. I know that in the end everything works out great for me. I am optimistic, but I do not trust the system that is around us, and it is because of things like this, and it is because once you realize that the pain is intentional. I see this a lot on people in the circles I run in on Twitter. The pain is intentional.
the pain is the point.
Yeah, the pain is the point. Why is Biden trying to put off, Saudi Arabia cutting off the oil until after elections, but cutting off the oil completely at home? The pain is the point.
Yeah.
But that's a conversation for
So
another day.
I want to go back to this, and here's to me the most infuriating part is the decision makers behind all this are not elected officials. Now, our elected officials are to blame to some level. They did some things well. They put money into the private sector to create this vaccine real quickly to help Americans. But they did something terrible at the same time. They took all the liability off of the company. So they can lie, cheat, and steal about it. And then the people making the policies about who has to have it and when they have to have it are unelected bureaucrats. Anthony Fauci, the most highly paid person in the American government, is unelected. He's an unelected bureaucrat. And that is really the people pushing these policies, the people firing servicemen, the people telling you these lies are not accountable to you. That is the biggest problem. I'm wholly convinced that if our founding fathers saw everything that was going on with our system of government, they would be rolling over in their graves. Like the large amounts of bureaucracy was never intended to be a part of our governmental system, ever.
Yeah, and that's a larger conversation and one that we can have since we're sort of doing this new model of the show. But like, my cynicism is going to come in, and I'm going to say that yes, these people were bureaucrats and are not held accountable. How much more accountable are our actual elected officials held to?
At least I can fire them.
Can you?
Yeah, I can vote for somebody else. That is me casting my vote to fire them. That's the way our system is intended to work.
It is intended to work that way. I think a discussion can be had about whether it works that way. Mostly because of the two-party dichotomy being kind of broken. But anyway, yes, our founding fathers would not recognize the country that we live in today. And it is because we live in a country where the legislature has given up its role.
Yes.
And in their not infinite, but heightened wisdom, they did not foresee a branch of the government actually wanting to get rid of its power, which is what the legislature does.
Yeah,
Your
legislature
Senate,
abdicated all their power to the
Yeah.
executive.
Here's another wake up call, hot take. Your senators and your representatives don't actually want to do anything. They just want to be elected.
Mhm.
They don't want to influence, especially if they're Republican. They don't want to influence your country. They don't want to actually vote on anything. They don't want to hold people accountable. They don't want to run the government. They just want their cushy jobs, by and large. And because of that, your president and his bureaucracy is allowed to run roughshod over everything.
We elect a king every 4 years now. I know people don't like to hear
And
that.
I would say
That's
that you
the fact
don't.
of the matter.
I would say that you don't. I say if you elect a Democrat, you elect a king. If you elect a Republican, if you elect a Republican, you elect a bench warmer who sits there for 4 years while the bureaucracy
I
continues
certainly
to do what the
hope whoever
bureaucracy
comes in
wants.
next. I hope whoever comes in next changes your mind. I really do. I hope that
They
we
will
have somebody
change
that
my
will come
mind.
in and make important changes.
I can tell you exactly. We talked about it last week. I can tell you exactly what the next person would need to do in order to change my mind about all of this, and they would have to They would have to demolish the FBI. We talked about this last week. The FBI is beyond saving. It does not serve a purpose beyond serving as an enforcement arm of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So the next Republican that you elect needs to recognize that and burn it down.
We need a cool
start
cow.
with the FBI.
We need a cool cow. Cool cow. Calvin Coolidge was the last president to shrink the executive.
Right.
That's what we need. We need someone who is going to shrink the executive branch. Now, I don't know the number of people who run just to give away their power. You know what we need? 80s movie here, maybe 90. I don't know. You can look it up if you want to. Brewster's Million. Did you ever see Brewster's Million?
I did not.
Brewster's Million is about a young man who's left an inheritance, and he is told, "Oh man, I'm gonna get these numbers wrong," but it's something like, "I will give you $300 million if you can spend $3 million in a month," something like that. I might have my numbers off. Might be $1 million in a month for $100 million, something like that. So what he does is one of the ways, his biggest money hole, which is, it's great. I totally think it was designed this way. His biggest money hole is he runs for the mayor of New York City, and he completely uses all this money to run on being the mayor of New York City. Because he spends money fast, and it's something that he can't have any assets with this money. That's the catch to spending all this money. You can't accumulate any assets.
Your net worth has to be zero at the end. Yeah.
Zero. Yeah. So he runs for mayor, and his platform is none of the above. You don't need to vote for any of these jokers. They are terrible. And in the process, he wins the vote, right? That was someone who ran for mayor who didn't want the power. We need someone to run for president who doesn't want the power, but they see the need to fix the United States and to fix the bureaucratic system of government and to, I don't want to use this language, but I'm going to burn it down. And I don't mean burn down our system of government. Our system of government is great, but burn down all the nonsense that's been added on top of it to get back to that system of government. Look, you can roll your eyes, but this republic has lasted this long because the system of government is fantastic.
The republic has only lasted 200 years. That's not an old republic.
This is not a history class, don't you even?
Monarchies last much longer.
We have the oldest system of Republican governance. Like, we have the oldest constitution. Like, the average age of a constitution is 17 years. Don't you get me into this. Don't you get me into this. But the point being is we need someone who's going to come in and day one go, you know what? There's nothing in this Constitution. There's nothing in these Bill of Rights about the federal government being involved in education / the Department of Education. Like if I ran for president today and I got to a month out from the election when they're like, hey, who's going to be on your cabinet? They'd be like, President Stephen, why don't you have somebody in the Department of Education? Be like, oh, because day one, it's gone. Like, bye-bye. And this is coming from an educator because of everything that we're talking about with this COVID stuff. Those are unelected bureaucrats who are given way too much money to institute and control change that they were never intended to have. Ever.
I think that at this point, the bureaucracy is a lot more powerful than the actual president. So I think you would have a much harder time than you are. It'd be a much more complicated task than what you are making it out to be.
I'm up for the challenge.
I know you would be, but and the type of leader that you are talking about, those men almost don't exist. I will say almost because we know men like that do exist. Men who don't necessarily want responsibility, but recognize the need that someone has to step up to the plate. Those men are very few and far between in our society. They are almost extinct because that is not a virtue in our society anymore. Our society props up those who choose not to take on responsibility. But do you hear my cat? My cat is making.
I do. Ruckus. She's been meowing this whole time.
Oh, she's a mess. But Gigi, I lost my train of thought. It's your fault.
Let's go back to this COVID and Pfizer.
I had a good
how
point.
Much money? I'm sure you had.
I had a good point. Yes. So going back to COVID, we need to talk about COVID. This is sort of a flash in the pan kind of story. COVID is pretty much done.
Yeah.
It's always nice to talk about how your government's lying to you and complain about them. But I remember my point. The actual leader that we're going to get next who actually does the job is going to be somebody who wants the power and who is willing to brutally use it. That's the person that's going to actually get all this stuff done that needs to be done. And he's not going to want to let go of the power. That's the more likely scenario. We keep talking about a tyrant that's coming up on the right. But anyway, yes. And
it's not because we want a tyrant. It's because that's the natural outlet.
We should expand on that. If you sort of research into this thing, you sort of research into this philosophy, this sort of mentality, prediction of what's coming. The concept is called the Red Caesar concept. There can never be a blue Caesar because liberalism tends to lean more towards bureaucracies rather than autocracies. But in its reaction, the right will eventually give rise to a Red Caesar, someone who they will invest all of the power into because he will do what needs to be done to sort of set us back, like reset us, revert us back to, ground zero, sort of blow it all up so that we can refresh. And then he's not going to want to let go of that power. So what comes of that? Maybe a monarchy. Maybe.
That's what happened in Rome.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why it's called the Red Caesar.
This is a phenomenon that's happened throughout history. The left pushes so hard. The liberals, they weren't always called liberals. We realize all this, but the liberals push so hard one direction that the pendulum gets swung to a broken level.
Yeah, the party of entropy would be the society degrades to the point. It gets elevated and heightened with all these liberal values and yes, we're all free and wonderful, but that also results in cultural degradation, which is what we're having now.
Which comes from libertinism, not liberty. Keep going.
That's an argument to be had, but will result in someone saying, okay, like things are too chaotic, things are too loose. You need someone who can set it aright. And that person is typically very authoritarian, willing to make hard, tough calls, and not super likable. But the right will love him briefly enough to get him power. And that is typically
It will
how these
be the
things
person.
get fixed.
It will be the person that they claimed Trump was. He will have all the characteristics that they said Trump had.
Sure.
Which, I mean, they lied about him for 4 years. They're still lying about him today, right?
And they're starting to lie about DeSantis. They're gonna lie until it actually comes true. They're going to lie this person into existence.
There it is. They're going to manifest this person through all the lies that they're saying. Yes.
And the actual result of this is probably not a renewed America. It's probably a broken up into several different countries kind of future. So be looking forward to that. All right, back to COVID. So yeah, what did I have here? So yeah, we talk and we can talk about what sort of blame Pfizer has for this. You and I sort of briefly touched on this. They did not test whether it stopped transmission.
Which they probably didn't have time. I ain't mad at them.
Sure. Well, yeah. And they did not, and even he, Dr. Rob Roos, Dr. Rob Roos came out, and because apparently a bunch of fact checkers were saying, yeah, but they never claimed that they tested for to stop transmission. And he's like, yeah, the scandal is not with Pfizer. The scandal is with the governments. Mm-hmm. Because yes, Pfizer didn't claim that they tested whether or not it stops transmission. They did not
put tweets out there.
They did not. Yeah,
they put tweets out there saying it would help protect others.
Yeah,
6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other.
Yeah, but that charge was led by the government.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of a circle saying where it says like, okay, Pfizer sure didn't test whether it stops transmission, but then the CDC claimed that it stopped transmission. So now Pfizer gets to say that the CDC claims it stops transmission, even though we don't really know that for sure. They're all sort of using this circular logic. They're depending on each other as sources, and basically coming up with any lie that they want. But what Bruce said is that the scandal is with the governments. They promoted this. They told you, that you had to do it to protect others. They appealed to your community loving nature, your desire to protect those around you. They took advantage of your good qualities, the better qualities in you, so that you would comply. And that's what they want, compliance.
I found the tweet, by the way. Pfizer Incorporated, the ability to vaccinate at speed to gain herd immunity and stop transmission is our highest priority. There is a lot of work ahead, and our focus is on supporting points of the vaccine jab as that's key to increasing the volume of people getting vaccinated every day. They said right there that it would stop transmission. That was at 6:24 p.m. on January 13th, 2021. I put it in our document if you want to pull it up for people on the screen. But going back to our problem with our legislators is they set up a system to where Pfizer can't be blamed. Okay, can't blame Pfizer. What are we going to do about correcting our government in order to do so? I found that tweet from Dr. Nicole Safier. Her handle is at NB Safier, Saphir, MD. Yeah, she tweeted all about it, and she just simply commented, well, that didn't age well.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about it to really. This is Steven's screenshot of the tweet, and I don't know enough about it, if it's because I don't know enough about herd immunity to believe it. Like maybe it's not maybe they're not claiming that they're, if I get it,
Fair.
that means I can't give it to an unvaccinated person. But if enough people get it, it stops spreading to the point where it just can't
Fair.
repopulate itself. If I'm steel manning their argument, that's what I'm saying they are meaning at this point. And we like to steel man people's arguments, because you
I
want
think
to
it's a good practice.
you want to tear people down at their strongest. So, if I'm on Pfizer's side, that's what I'm saying. But it's still, they didn't not claim that it wasn't going to. But so Pfizer bears maybe a little responsibility, not nearly as much as the government's in this situation.
Sure.
But if they can find any significant evidence that they sort of let this lie persist, because they were also saying at the time, like, I think they were very careful to claim we're not sure about the transmission thing at some points.
That was all coming from our government entities.
Right. So maybe they're a bit protected. And they're a company. I would expect them to be that cautious. If there is evidence of them claiming it does something that it doesn't, that is fraud. And anyone who is having something we can talk about next, harmful side effects from the vaccine, should take that up with Pfizer. Now, they got special protections, but if it's found that they're lying about this stuff, there may be some sort of case there. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but certainly some and I've seen this. Everybody, we talked about how, we need to demolish it, all of the bureaucracy. If the next guy gets in and he demolishes the CDC, I'm going to be a happy camper. There's an argument to be made that the CDC serves a national security interest. But I think you kind of have to burn it down and build it back up, because it's clearly just a tool right now. But I see a lot of the more radical people on our side saying this is not nobody. It's not just that people should be tried for this.
Yes.
People should be facing jail time for this level of dishonesty and hysteria that resulted. People lost businesses, they lost their livelihoods, they lost their lives. People need to be held accountable. They need to be sent to jail, at several levels. Not only is that not happening, people aren't even getting fired over this.
No. Yeah, it's ineptitude at the highest level. It's malfeasance. It's fraud. And all these things that we are now talking about, we couldn't talk about them a year ago. We couldn't talk about possible side effects from the vaccine. You would get kicked off of social media for it.
They might not let this video go up on YouTube. Still, there is no accountability for any of this. And you have to start calling for and expecting severer judgment when these sorts of things happen. When, again, FBI, we talked about last week, when that sort of thing becomes public, when it is seen that, people at the DOJ and the FBI are working together to persecute pro-life protesters, that needs to be. But because they are all so ingrained with one another, you know why no one at the CDC is going to get prosecuted? Because the people that would be prosecuting
the CDC and
them
DOJ,
are their golf buddies. That is the problem. So
it's one big happy bureaucratic family. And the whole argument of You know, the whole argument of, well, you need to get vaccines to protect others. The most egregious form of that came from the teachers union. So I've stated this several times. I am an educator. I am not in a teachers union. I will never be in a teachers union, mostly because in our state they're illegal. Which, good job. Bad unions. But on top of all that, the teachers unions were saying, hey, your kid has to get vaccinated in order to, one, come to school, two, to protect me. Well, if you've been vaccinated, you're already protected. Why do I need to get children to have a vaccine when they don't need it? The virus was not killing children. And there you go. It was causing harmful side effects that they wouldn't have. The risk of the harmful side effect for children is worse than the actual disease, the infection.
So
Go ahead.
this is directly from the CDC. The very fact that they mentioned that it is rare, first of all, means that it exists. It exists to the point where they have to admit that it exists, because the CDC very much has an incentive to not shed light on this. This is the claim that you hear whenever you're talking to your crazy nut Uncle Joe about how he didn't get the vaccine because he didn't want his heart to explode. There is a trend in particularly males getting the double dose of the vaccine and suffering from myocarditis, possibly pericarditis. What are those? Those are fancy words for heart issues. Mm-hmm. And so it is, myocarditis have rarely been reported. So again, this is the CDC. They're going to understate the numbers. When reported, the cases have especially been in adolescents and young adult males. Stephen, what is the problem with that?
Those kids weren't going to get sick, or one, they weren't going to get sick. Two, they weren't going to get killed. Yeah. Like, what's the big deal? Like, so, why give them a vaccine that has a possibility of irreparable side effects when the COVID wasn't going to hurt these people?
When this was rare, it should have been everywhere. Everyone at the CDC should have been coming out and saying, hey guys, this might be causing heart issues in young adult males. They are not super at risk of dying from COVID. They should not get the vaccine.
And the vaccine's not going to stop them from killing grandma like we've been telling them.
Right.
Like, it's not going to stop transmission.
This is another problem with telling everyone that you're getting the vaccine to stop transmission. This young adult male that is dying from heart inflammation, he could have foregone the vaccine and been fine, so long as he didn't go around grandma when and if he got COVID.
Yeah, and so they weren't allowed to study this for the longest time, right? Like, you can't even bring this up.
You just weren't allowed to bring it up.
JAMA posted, it's 2022, so sometime this year they posted a study on this. JAMA is the Journal of American Medical Association. It's like the elite journal, one of the top tier journals for the medical association.
Let's
myocarditis cases reported. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like, should I still get myself or my child vaccinated? Yes. Continues to recommend that everyone ages 6 months and older get vaccinated for COVID-19. 6 months and older. First of all,
I have a 2.5-year-old, and he's not getting the COVID vaccine.
Yeah,
he's not doing it.
There's no reason for anyone under the age of 15 to get the vaccine.
Why should I vaccinate him? Exactly. There's no good reason to vaccinate that child.
There's an argument to be made for 20.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're still going to suggest it, even though JAMA now has a study. This was the meaning that came from the study based on passive surveillance. Now, notice what it is. Passive. They can't do a study on this. So they're having to do passive data. That's a different study down the research hole that we don't have time for. Based on passive surveillance reporting in the U.S., the risk of myocarditis after receiving mRNA-based COVID-19 vaccines was increased across multiple age and sex strata and was the highest at the second vaccination dose in adolescent males and young men. young men were ages 18 to 24. Adolescent males were ages 16 and 17. You have the data on that. Pull that up. What was the risk of a 17-year-old dying from this? Pull that up.
Yeah. So this is as of 10/12 from the start of 2020. For all sexes, 0 to 17 years, out of 1 million people, there were 1,300 deaths.
And that's terrible. Every single one of those is tragic. Also, they all had underlying conditions except SANS 10, something like that. Dr. McCarty-McCary from Johns Hopkins has been at the forefront of that, and they've been trying to stop that research. The people dying who did not have previous conditions that were youth is just basically non-existent.
Yep.
Sorry, you can pull up the males too there.
Yeah, the males, 0 to 17 was 700 out of 585,000. Not even.
They weren't at risk of dying, but now they have a higher risk of myocarditis. It is a severe issue.
Which I mean, like, yeah, that concerns me. Like, I got the vaccine. Like, my wife is already going to outlive me. I don't need any more reasons that I might go before her.
Yeah. I would suggest everybody check out this. Okay, I just found the date of the original investigation.
And this
January
is from the
25th, 2022. Yeah, you're looking at CDC. Everybody can Google this. JAMA is free for anybody to read. January 25th, 2022, they came out with this study: myocarditis cases reported after mRNA-based COVID-19 vaccination in the U.S. from December 2020 to August 2021. It was an et al. Study, which means it had a ton of researchers behind it. Go check it out. We have to shed light on this thing because light is the best disinfectant. Oh, pulling up Seth Dillon, huh?
Yeah, this is something he posted the other day when all this started coming out. All of these things are true.
Yeah, every single one of them. And so this, yes, we're talking about one topic today that goes to a
For those of you
broader
listening,
point.
I should read it for those of you listening to the podcast.
Sure, yeah, they can't.
Seth Dillon says, had posts 4 facts on Twitter. Number 1, staggering profit was generated by Pfizer off the back of lies and coercion. Number 2, young, healthy people who didn't need the vaccine were killed. This happened. This is a fact. Number 3, everyone who pushed back on the lies and coercion was vilified, and many were silenced. They still are. And number 4, nothing will be done about any of it.
Again, I want to reiterate the fact we are not anti-vaxxers. You know, we nothing like that. Just be honest and upfront and let us make our own risk calculations. I probably still would have gotten the vaccine. I probably still would have done it either way, personally. You might not have, and that's fine. I'm grateful that I'm young, healthy, I exercise, so on and so forth. People with pre-existing conditions, it's very important for them to have mild cases. I think of my father. My father has 3 lung problems. Well, he has 2 lung and a heart issue. I begged him to get vaccinated because I told him. He said, well, son, you know, if I get this, I'll go to the hospital for a couple of weeks and I'll be fine. And I looked at him. I said, no, Dad, I will go to the hospital for a couple of weeks. You may die because you have serious pre-existing conditions. Right. And I still wholly believe that. I'm glad my dad has been vaccinated. I'm glad my dad has been boosted. He needs all the protection he can get because of his pre-existing conditions. But he is in a very small minority of people that are in the situation that he is in. And just be upfront and honest with people and let people make their own risk assessments. Because if you don't, you're going to have a worse backlash than what it would have been otherwise.
Yeah, not concerned with that. Short-term solutions, you know.
I am. I am. And we are talking to people who should be concerned about that. Urge people to look past their nose, look into the future. If this situation has taught us anything, is that we need to look further into the future.
Well, and the practical lesson that people listening and watching need to take away from this is that, don't trust your government.
Don't trust the government. Do your research.
Educate yourself, and be careful while educating yourself, because everything out there on this was spouting out the same message.
Mm-hmm.
If you get this, you won't be able to pass it to other people. You'll be less likely to pass it to other people. And
if you get this, you'll be perfectly safe. There's no side effects whatsoever.
Right.
Well, okay. They weren't saying there weren't side effects. They were saying you're going to have a sore arm and you might run a fever for a day.
Yeah. We had no clue what the long-term side effects would be.
And that's why my son hasn't gotten it. That's why my son won't get it.
Right.
It won't happen. He doesn't need it.
Yeah. Be careful about, where you're getting your information from. Make sure that you're listening to multiple sources, people who are for and against whatever it is you're trying to make a decision about, because everything out there is especially when it comes from our elites, whether there's a Republican in office or not,
mm-hmm.
Everything out there is garbage, pretty much. You have to make sure that you are fully educated before you start making these kinds of decisions.
Yep.
And don't be surprised when you find out that they pulled one over on you, because they're constantly lying to you.
Mm-hmm.
Have your pets spayed and neutered.
You sure you don't want to have the voice box clipped after this one?
Oh yeah. All right. Well, that is the time. So obviously we tried something a little different this week. Rather than trying to rapid fire several stories from the past week, we chose the biggest story and sort of let that take us down whatever rabbit holes it did.
The broader implications from big stories. That's what we're looking at. Yeah. We're looking at broader implications.
I think it suits us more. We're kind of more prone to going down rabbit holes. I think we've been fighting off that urge with the other model. So I think we might see where this takes us. And I think this video will be a bit more evergreen. So thank you all for listening and watching. Please be sure to share and like and subscribe and do all the other internet things that you kids do these days. And we very much appreciate you for giving us your time and attention. And we hope that you got something out of it. Stephen?
No, that's all I have. Thank y'all for watching, listening, wherever you are. And I hope this new model works. It lets us speak a little bit more freely and get a little bit more in depth about what we're talking about. Maybe bring up more lengthy videos, some deeper topics, some ability to maybe look at journals and things like that. So, we might not even talk about something that's happened the past week or so in the future. We might talk about something in the past and the broader implications of that. That's what we're looking at. We want to be more big picture and not just small individual things.
Yeah, we big brain around here.
Big brain.
All right. Love you guys. Thank you so much. And we will see you on the next Always Right.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.